IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we discuss the story of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hey guys, welcome to another new episode of the Musafir Stories. We have one of our favorite guests, Aakash Mehrotra, back on the podcast and taking us and talking about India's first heritage village. Let's hop on to the episode and find out more.
With that introduction, we'd love to welcome Aakash Mehrotra from the blog handofcolors.me. Aakash, thank you so much for being a part of the Musafir Stories again, I should say, and welcome.
Thanks a lot. And thanks for having me again.
Yeah, Aakash is definitely our most popular guest, I would say. This is the third time. So time that Aakash has actually been on the podcast, and he's done some wonderful, and actually one of our best episodes as well. One on Nagaland and the other one on Landor not too long ago. So we'll definitely link those in the show notes. But Aakash, for somebody listening to this for the first time, why don't you please speak a little bit about yourself, because you're a traveler, you're also an author, and you do a bunch of other things, all of it along with your day job. So please tell us a little bit more about you on the blog.
Sure. I'm working as a consultant in Delhi, and I work on theme of international development in Asia and Africa. And whatever time I get, I travel. In fact, I get a lot of time, thankfully. So I get to travel quite a lot. And I started my travel blog 5 years now. It's been almost 5 years. And I wrote my first novel in 2017. My second novel has already been pitched to the publishers. So hopefully I'll get a news this year. And I'm hoping by the end of this year or maybe the first quarter of next year, my second novel will be out as well.
Yeah, I think that's great news, and we'll link to all of these resources that we're touching upon. And really, really glad to have you back, Aakash, because each time you've been with us, you've just given us brilliant stories and brilliant experiences from your travels. So with that in mind, where are you taking us to today?
Sure. So today we'll be going to Pragpur. It's a heritage village in Himachal Pradesh. It's like a weekend itinerary, you can say, not very far from Delhi. In fact, it's very near to the foothills of Himachal Pradesh in the Kangra Valley. And so the amazing part about this Pragpur village as such is that it's a heritage village, and it's India's first heritage village. So it has a lot of history, and history is something that we usually do not relate with Himachal. We usually relate Himachal with scenic beauty, some religious tours maybe. But history and architecture is something which is a little quaint to Himachal Pradesh as such. So that makes Pragpur and its neighboring village, Garli, a very iconic place as such for me.
Yeah, definitely. And that actually caught my eye as well when you said that these are the first heritage villages in India. I think we'll definitely see why that is, and what is the unique feature of these two Himachali villages. Obviously, the surrounding scenic beauty of Himachal, like you mentioned, is something all of us have had a taste of and really, really appreciate. But looking at this facet of Himachal from an architectural perspective, which is also very unique, by the way, right? So looking at it from that perspective and also finding out a little bit more about this very quaint two sister towns or sister villages, you could say, right? Pragpur and Garli. I think it's going to be a unique experience, and really, really looking forward to it. And just in terms of getting there and the access to the villages itself, how accessible is it? And like the last mile connectivity, how would you suggest one takes care of that?
It's quite well connected to Delhi as such. I took an overnight bus to Pragpur village, and any bus that goes through Kangra will pass through Pragpur because it's on the way. Hamirpur is the nearest town. There is a very small railway head called Ambh, which is like 40 kilometers from Pragpur, which is the nearest railway head. And so you can go to Pathankot, and from Pathankot you can go to Ambh. There are various ways, but I think the best way if you are traveling from Delhi is either you go through, you take a bus and go there, or the second way could be, just fly down to Kangra, the Guggal airport. And the Guggal airport is also unique in a way because it's built in a very different manner and in a very unique setup as such. So, and it's very scenic. I mean, anybody who has gone to Kangra will accept this thing and will concur with me that Kangra is one of the most scenic places in the Himachal, with all those tea gardens and everything. You get a quaint hint of that in Pragpur as well. And just to add, Pragpur is not just about the architecture and houses and a little bit of history and all that. You will have like really good views from there. There's a Dhauladhar range, which is a continuous backdrop for your photographs all the time. And a little while from there, you can go to the Beas river. And these are like very, it's Himachal Pradesh in a very different way than what we look at Himachal Pradesh. So there are lots of different things. So you will find a little bit taste of those foothills of Himachal Pradesh. There is history, there's architecture, there is just a hint of snow-laden mountains starting from somewhere in the distance. So it's a very unique setup that way. And the life is very different because the demographic of this place is different. Because of this being close to Punjab, you'll find a lot of Punjabi influence over there as well. So in a lot of other ways also, it's different from how we see Himachal, like the usual Himachal as such.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's very, very fascinating to find out a little bit more about this, like you mentioned at the beginning as well. Now, in terms of a good time to visit here, I know Himachal, you could perhaps make or have different experiences based on the time of the year you visit. But when do you suggest is a good time to visit Pragpur and Garli?
I mean, absolutely any time of the year. In fact, even in the winters, it doesn't snow here a lot. So if you are not into like too cold winters, but still want to have some, sense, some touch of Himachal, these are nice places. I went there in summers, and summers are absolutely beautiful in this part. It's quite windy, it's cool, and it's a little hotter than the usual Himachal because it's very close to the foothills, but it's way better than, the temperatures of Delhi or, the North India as such.
Yeah, definitely a good quick getaway even in the summers, like it has always been, right? Himachal and the surrounding areas. So just keep that in mind. And also just jumping into a little bit of a background about Pragpur as well. I was looking up that I believe this was one of the, again, royal kingdoms in the past. It was one of the royal kingdoms of the area of the Kangra region, the Jaswan clan, who actually started this village earlier on, and it was Prag Devi, one of the princes who it's been named after. But any more context that you got from your visit about the place, about the history and the background of the place, Aakash?
You're absolutely spot on. One thing that made this particular region, and in fact the entire Hamirpur, Una, and the nearby villages, all of these places, is that they were like the resource powerhouse of those kingdoms. A lot of trade used to happen from there. And they had a lot of influence of these traders. And I could find a very, somewhat a relationship between the Shekhawati region of Rajasthan, because the Shekhawati region has its own royals and princes and all, but it was majorly known for its traders. And a lot of traders' family actually came from there. And you can name it like the Birlas, the Khetans and all that. They actually come from the Shekhawati area. So I see Pragpur, Garli and the entire region as like a little Shekhawati of the Kangra region. A lot of trade used to happen from there, and especially of timber. And in fact, Garli was one of the major points of timber trade one time in India because of, one, its accessibility to the Beas river, which is like some kilometers away, which used to be like, for all the lumbering operations you can use over there. So timber was one of the major industries in these areas. The entire Pragpur and Garli was actually all the mansions and all the architectural setups that you see over there is because of the traders who were living there. They built their own havelis and their own mansions there. And because they had a lot of money, and they had a lot of money to resource the princely estates of those regions. Yeah, so that's how I find it very, very close to Shekhawati. Shekhawati being more famous, I think it will be easier to relate for anybody.
Yeah, definitely. And just to your point, right? I believe this is the Sood community. Originally they were all based more in the Sirhind region of Punjab, and later on they all migrated while they were being, persecuted during the times of the Mughals. They migrated to the Himachal areas of Himachal like this, Pragpur and the neighboring places, and made it big in terms of trading, in terms of other mercantile operations, primarily timber, like you said. Right. And also, apparently, they during the colonial periods, when the Britishers were actually building up Shimla as the summer capital, these were the traders and the merchants who actually provided a lot of the supplies and everything, and that's how they made their fortune back in the day. And with that newly made fortunes, they came back and spent on these mansions and havelis in their native places, right? So that similarity between Shekhawati that you're calling out is very, very valid, and it's really nice to kind of see a little bit of a backstory and the context also, right? Like why Absolutely. Is it in a certain way, or why does this reflect, say, sense or that little bit of influence of even Rajasthani architecture from where the Sood community originally is from, right? So all of those things actually tie really nicely when you start looking at it. But tell us a little bit more about your experience. How long of a trip was it that you made to Pragpur and Garli? And just share a little bit from the sights and sounds and the different experiences you had there.
Sure. But before that, let me add one thing that, so my guide actually told me that these Soods are actually, were actually known as the Marwadis of Himachal Pradesh. And one of the things was that because this is more in the foothills, it doesn't snow here much, and the temperatures remain nice and salubrious the entire year. The summers are not too harsh, the winters are not too harsh. That's why it was easy for these traders to settle in this part of the region, and that's how they could control the entire Himachal Pradesh, and their operations were to as far as Jammu Kashmir and all that. So they could get all of those things because they could operate the entire year. They had a Beas river in their background from where a lot of these operations could go on, because it being the major medium of transport in those times. And you're absolutely spot on that these traders built a huge fortune during the British time, when British were establishing their summer capital in Shimla, and also when they were doing a lot of operations in Himachal Pradesh. And in fact, one of the industries that the British actually were very enthused about, or they stressed a lot upon, was lumbering, because of building railways and everything. And so that's why some people in Uttarakhand and these traders over here, they built a huge fortune, because all those lumbering operations used to happen from these routes only. That ended up in those beautiful mansions in these two sister villages. Coming back to your question, so this was a weekend trip. I was there only for 2 days because, these are only two villages, so you can cover them in 2 days, and that's quite a good amount of time to cover these two villages. I stayed in a beautiful and an iconic place, in fact, a very heritage place called Judges Court, which is also one of the nicest places to stay in Pragpur and Garli, because there aren't many options, like stay options over there. Judges Court is one, and the second is in Garli called Chateau Garli, which is another heritage building, heritage hotel. In these two villages, I spent almost a day, one day in Pragpur. Garli is like another under 5 kilometers. We went the entire different routes and stuff, covering a lot of stuff. So that's why I took a lot more time. But it's just 5 kilometers from there. And Garli is smaller than Pragpur. Pragpur was the main center, and still today you can feel like a small town vibe over there. So a very unique thing about the architecture of these places was the amalgamation of designs that you see over here. So there's a Rajputana design in some buildings. There is a Mughal architecture. There is even a Portuguese architecture. And different shades of it. And you can easily link to, how the trade used to happen over there. So the traders from here, they went to places like Shekhawati, which was another trading area, and they saw architecture and structures over there, and that somewhere led to designs over here, evolution of new designs here. The Mughal architecture is coming from the old era in which, these traders were actually, as you have rightly said, from Punjab. They came to Himachal during the Mughal time. So they brought in a lot of those architectural designs with them as well.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, it's all basically all of these traders and the trading community, the Sood community, they bring back their experiences and their experiences from their travels for trade, right? When they used to venture out, they would get all of those experiences, come back and invest in beautifying and building their mansions and their havelis in these different styles. And I guess the good thing is that this is, even though like the village, the two villages, or at least Pragpur was the first one that was set up. It was set up in the late 16th century. So almost for 400 years or so, this has actually been captured and maintained and preserved, right? That's the heartening thing about this. And that's why they have this heritage village tag, the first heritage village, even though I believe it was in only around 1997 or so that this heritage village tag was given. But still, nonetheless, it's really commendable that they've been able to maintain this. And I guess one of the things might also have been that it's a fairly small village, like you said. It's only, I think, a population of about 2,000 people. So it's not too populated, and they've been able to hold on to a lot of these marvelous structures. Just the overall ambience of the place also, right? With these cobblestone streets and the sloped roofs of these houses, like you said, all of that has been maintained, and that's the charm and the quaintness of the two sister villages, yeah.
Right. So there have been some decay. Some of the buildings are now left abandoned, and some of the buildings are in very bad shape because these buildings require a lot of resources for the upkeep. But even if you ignore these little things, and you can find a lot of these photographs on my blog in which, I just go ranting about that, how these beautiful buildings have been abandoned. Because you go there as a traveler, you look at those things, and then you see how beautiful these buildings are. And then you start wondering, how can somebody abandon it? Or how can, the government now not put in efforts to really restore these things? Because a lot of these buildings could be literally turned into nice hotels or maybe museums or just anything, a public place or anything, just to keep them, over there, like, in some shape, some proper shape and stuff. But still, in spite of all this pessimism that you get, there's a lot of optimism over there, because there are a lot of buildings which people have been able to do a proper upkeep of them, and they are in pretty nice shape, and you can easily see their architecture, even the wall paintings. Some of these have been restored. Obviously, some have made into heritage hotels, but the others also have been restored by their owners. And just going around the village, walking around the village from the center place, which is usually a talab over there, and you go around and you see the buildings were built in a very unique manner, and they all have sloped roofs. And that was a pretty strange thing for me, because this area doesn't. It's very rare for this area to receive a snowfall or a massive snowfall as such.
Yeah, definitely. And just touching upon your point, right? I believe that that pond or that little water body. It's almost like the center of the village. Yeah, it's
Right.
not too huge, the village, but this is basically like the center of the village, the Tal or the Naam,
Yes.
as it's called. Yeah.
It is.
That's the center of the village, and you see a lot of beautiful buildings around it. And also touching a little bit upon your place of stay, right? You said Judge's Court. That's where you stayed. That one was also a beautiful property. Just the whole setting of it, how it's set up. Looking at your pictures, really, really beautiful, right? So, would you like to call out just both the structure of it as well as the setting of it? The locale is beautiful, where the Judge's Court is.
Yeah, so after my visit, after these 2 days of my visit, I received an email from the manager of Judge's Court, and he asked me, how was your visit? And my reply to his email was like, this is the only court where I'd like to go again. And you are the only judge I'd like to visit in my life. I mean, if you have looked at the photograph of that, you will see like a shade of white and then reds, and it looks very iconic from far. It's a huge setup also, and it's very close to the center of the village, which is good. And it's a 300-year-old ancestral home, so you can imagine how much goes into the upkeep of this thing. You can literally visualize the rooms with those huge chandeliers and very high roofs and a lot of woodwork in them. So it gives a very different sort of a feeling because, these heritage hotels, and I haven't been to a heritage hotel, which is like a 350-year-old thing or something, and not a palace. So that's how it is good. So it was by Justice Sri Lal who actually, and he told me that this building of his was literally left and it was abandoned like many other buildings in Pragpur. And way back in 1980s or something, he actually thought of why don't we do something of this. At that time, turning it into a hotel was never an option. And it came back way back. But then in 1980s or something, he was very sure that he has to do an upkeep of this building and not sell it off, which I think was such a nice decision of his. And later he converted it into a heritage building. So if you go to this place, you'll find there's a huge courtyard, there's a huge... you go to the terrace and you can see the Dhauladhar in the backdrop, and that is such a serene setting in which it is. And on one of the sides of the terrace, you can see the entire Pragpur village from there. So that's how beautifully it's located in the center, from where you can see literally the whole village. And on one side, you can see, as far as the eye goes, you can see the greens and the hills, ultimately culminating to the Dhauladhar range there. So it's very serene setting.
Yeah, definitely. And also like the orchards surrounding it also, right? It kind of is isolated also from any other structures. That way also you get this really stately and majestic feeling about the structure and the building. And like you said, 300-year-old property. So you have all of these beautiful antique furniture even within the property. So if you can, I believe it's a little pricey, but if you can afford, I think definitely something to consider for a stay in Pragpur, correct?
Definitely.
Yeah. So that was one of the key mansions of the properties. I also saw a few interesting other structures in the area, but I think the best way to kind of go about and explore the village will just be set out on foot and walk around, right? It's not that you can actually go looking for a place on your Google map. That might not be the best way of exploring it. Just go around looking for it. But some of the other beautiful mansions that I saw was one was apparently called as Butel Nivas, right? That one was also a beautiful brick mansion.
Right.
And then another one was Lala Rerumal's Haveli.
Right.
So all of these really, really unique in their own right, and have some feature that might differ from the other. One might be primarily a brick structure, whereas the other might be more of a wooden structure. But the beautiful thing is, like I said, the antiquity to it, the heritage part of it that just shines out. How was your time spent apart from, I'm assuming, going around the village and checking out some of these other beautiful mansions and havelis?
So frankly speaking, I was literally lazing around in those 2 days most of the time, and I went on a drive to the nearby areas and then to the Beas, and then there's a whole road which goes parallel to the Beas. And I took that entire road because, it's just beautiful to see that huge river and you are driving parallel to it, from jumping from one small hamlet to the other small hamlet. Because if you look at Pragpur as such, because it's just a village of 2,500 people, it's not a huge it's not a huge setup over there. It's not a big place where you have to list down your itinerary and you have to go with a map and see and check those things. Yeah. All you need to do is just go to the center of the village, that is the Tal, and around the village you can see a lot of buildings over there, which mostly are now public buildings. Something is a public healthcare center, one is a local court or whatever. But these are all those small buildings which were built in a very unique way by those traders over there. And then just keep going around. Take those cobbled road, take the by lanes, and you will find some mansion or some haveli somewhere. You literally don't need a map for it. Garli, however, in Garli, I literally found a map because, and personally I feel that Garli has been more organized in terms of tourist activities. And so they had a map, and you can take that map with you and you can still go around pointing places over there. But again, even if you ditch the map, all you need to do is start at one point and start walking around. There's a tourism office in Garli. Start from that point and then keep walking around. And you'll find a lot of those buildings. And the buildings of Garli and the buildings of Pragpur were a little different, I might say. So Garli, to some extent, I found was more prosperous and more industrious in terms of their architecture. And it could be because of the proximity to the Beas, and a lot of trade used to happen from Garli and not from Pragpur. Pragpur looked more like a residential setup for people. It didn't give you that industrial sort of a feeling. It was more like people are settled over there, so it has some very huge mansions with courtyards and stuff. And Garli has more, they have smaller ones, they are more compacted, but they are overdone with wood and bricks or whatever play you can say. So, you can get a certain feeling that people in Pragpur were like the main traders or something, so they had like huge mansions. But people in Garli, because they were controlling those little setups and operations over there, they had put in a lot of efforts in their own mansions just to make them look good. And Pragpur is in a better shape today because a lot of people still stay over there. Garli, a lot of those buildings are now abandoned. So most of the abandoned buildings that I found were from Garli.
Okay. Yeah, because even I saw a couple of interesting tidbits when I was looking up Garli as well. Firstly, it seems to be a little bit newer, if I could say, compared to Pragpur. So that's one bit. So the colonial influence is a little bit more pronounced in Garli. That's what even I felt looking at the structures. And the other part was there's an interesting actually story or a backstory to this as well, that apparently back in the day, I don't know, this is a legend, urban legend, but there was a curse or whatever that a young lady who was accused of adultery by the village, she had put that Garli will will suffer, will not prosper for a while. And apparently it was abandoned for a few years or decades or whatever that is. And that's how a lot of these abandoned buildings, you see more of them in Garli as compared to Pragpur, which is more of a residential setup and people actually live there, like you said, right? So that's I don't know how much truth there is to this and what the source of this is, but that was one of the urban legends I came across. So just interesting stories, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are 2 or 3 stories to it. One is definitely discussed, but I think one of the major explanations of differences between Pragpur and Garli was because a lot of these operations after a time shifted from Beas to roads. And that's why you never needed those small operational setups. And that's where Garli started losing and Pragpur was on the main road and it started prospering. And so that was one factor because of which a lot of those buildings were then abandoned because nobody needed it. And people started shifting to different places.
Yep.
But still, there are a lot of buildings in which people live and they are just very beautiful buildings.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, the iconic one in Garli would obviously be the Chateau Garli. Yeah, that's the one
definitely.
You also visited, I'm assuming, yeah.
Yes, definitely. And from there only you can get that how much the sort of architectural dexterity that you see in Garli, I mean, you can get a hit from this Chateau as well. That what sort of inputs they were putting in their own mansions. It's a very beautiful building and I didn't stay there, which I mean, it's unfortunate in a way, but I'll definitely like to go there and stay over there.
Definitely very, very unique experience and also very different, even if you compare it to your stay in King's Court, right? Even compared to that structure, like you said, it's heavily it has the colonial influences on it, and I think what stood out for me was all of this beautiful use of stained glass in the structure, right? So that actually was pretty standout in Chateau Garli, and also known as Melaram's Koti or Nalke Wali Koti, I believe, because of the water pump or whatever, the nalka that you call in Hindi, because of that. So that's what it's called. Yeah, a lot of very, very unique buildings around the area as well. I saw a couple of interesting names. Another one was Santri Wali Koti, right? Basically, it has a structure of almost Santris, I think a soldier or some sort of
a head soldier or something.
Yeah, something like that. So that was one, and it has a structure of it on the top of it, and a few others as well, and a lot of these sarais that you say, a lot of those also, right? Lodges, basically. Those
lodges.
are the olden day lodges, yeah. And this was also one of the many occupations that the communities apparently were in, since this was a part of the trade route. So a lot of traders and visitors would keep on visiting this area. So a lot of these lodges or sarais, those flourished as well. And perhaps you could even get a chance to stay in one of those very affordable accommodations. Some of them even now. So you could get a chance to stay in one of those just to experience it. Like I said, even though from perspective of just going around and experiencing the places, it might seem similar, but when you start looking at the subtle differences and the nuances and try to dig deeper into that, you actually stumble upon a lot of interesting facts and tidbits from the past, right? In terms of places in the vicinity, right? I know we didn't touch upon this much, but Kangra itself is rich in a number of places close by as well. Aakash, would you like to, because for somebody looking at, say, an excellent itinerary, if somebody wants to explore the Kangra region in general, as against just Pragpur and Garli, could you please call out some of the other options one might have?
Sure. Kangra, the main Kangra district as such is approximately just 35 or 40 kilometers from here, so not very far. And Dharamshala is another 65 kilometers from here. And Kangra, as we all know, is known for its tea estates, and it has a lot of religious significance. It has a lot of cultural significance as such. So one of the places that you must go when you are in these two places, I mean, it's better to extend your trip. I did not do it, but I'll really advise to extend the trip to another 2 days and try to cover as much as possible in Kangra, is go to Palampur tea estates, which is another 60, 70 kilometers from here. And the Kangra fort is 40 kilometers or 45 kilometers maybe from here, which is, just seeing a fort in those heights is a great feeling in itself. And then Kangra has a lot of these religious places. There's the Jwalamukhi temple is there, and the Chamunda temple is there, and all of these temples find very specific and special significance in the religion. A lot of people actually go and visit Jwalamukhi temple or Chamunda temple, or there's another Chintapurni Devi temple, all of these temples. Mm-hmm. So you can combine all of this trip together. You are going there for, a religious tour or a cultural tour, just combine with a little bit of, history tour, and settle down in these two small villages, enjoy the village life of this, which is also good. Palampur has a lot of beautiful places around as well. So there are small villages around Palampur which they have converted, which have evolved in a very different way. So these are something that one can always take a detour to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you want a laid back trip, surely spend the whole weekend here not doing much. But even if you'd like to go beyond the two sister villages of Pragpur and Garli, there's obviously several options that Aakash called out. And there's several significant religious places, right, Aakash? Like you mentioned, the Jwala Mata or the Jwalamukhi temple that you said, that one is really important one, where basically the deity is a flame, right? That's out from flame. So that one's an important one. And I also saw another one called as the Dada Siba, I believe. That's another village that has really beautiful, intricate murals and paintings in the Kangra style of painting and art, right? So that one's also very unique that way. It's really in the vicinity if you'd like to visit.
Right.
But it could easily be mixed with a religious circuit or a spiritual circuit of sorts, given that how rich Himachal is in such places. So definitely check that out. And what about food, Aakash? I know we didn't touch upon a lot of it, but did you try out anything beyond the local dhabas or anything special that stood out for you?
So I must say that one of the best foods I've ever eaten is Himachali food. If you get a chance to have Himachali dham somehow, it's pretty amazing. But even if you don't get that, I think the normal food also in Himachal is so well prepared. It will be the same sort of food, the same rajma, the same dal, the same chana, and the same vegetables and all that. But they are just cooked in a very unique manner. I don't know what do they do, but that just tastes very different and very raw over there. And try to have red rice over there. It's highly nutritious. And I got a taste of that with rajma. It's highly nutritious and it's very unique to Himachal because you don't get it outside Himachal as such.
Yeah, definitely try out the Himachali dham or the Kangri dham, like they say, right?
Yes.
If you get a chance, do try that out. And even a couple of important times of the year you could visit, I read, is that Lodi, right? That's an important festival in the region. So that might be a good time to visit. And also something called as the Nakki Ka Mela, basically the wrestling festival of Pragpur and the region around. So that's also an important time of the year, happens in September. So if you happen to visit during that time, make sure you check out these other cultural and local aspects of the places, right? But overall a very, very enriching trip. And thanks so much, Aakash, for beautifully walking us through this. And you outdo yourself each time. And
thanks.
I'd really, really like to thank you for the diversity of travels also that you bring each time you take us to different places. And you just kind of help us absorb that the vibe of the place, just the feeling of the place, not just from external perspective as to what you can see and observe, but also from more of a deeper, nuanced view of it, taking a view of it based on its rich history, its culture, its people, all of that. You tie all of those so beautifully together that it really comes together in a wonderful way, and just becomes such an enjoyable experience just listening to it. So I can only imagine going and visiting such places, and I can't really wait to actually go and try some of these places and experiences that you have had. Any final thoughts, Aakash, before we start winding up the episode?
I mean, the only final thought that I had over there when I was visiting is that there is literally so much in terms of culture and history in our country and in these very little places. And it's just that we have to literally go and discover these things, understand those nuances, and see how the place has evolved. And it's a whole dimension of history that you can read over there. And you don't need a book for it, but you just have to go look around. You have to look for science, and you can learn a lot from there on how the country has come together. I mean those different just signs over there, like Rajputana part, Portuguese part, or Mughal part, or Islamic part, and everything. It just calls out on the diversity of the country that, that there's so much in this country. That in one little village, you can actually find 4 or 5 different styles of architecture all coming together. So you can imagine how many different styles of architecture could be there in India, and how they have all evolved over the years, how they all have mixed together. And it's all about diversity, people coming together, trading and interacting, and that resulted in a different design. So, these are huge signs for us to explore different regions as well. You go and explore those parts, you learn a lot about the country and the country history and the culture and the whole idea of India as such, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Very beautifully put. And I think it's these different things that actually make it so unique, right? It's almost like one of our previous guests also had beautifully put it, that there's several Indias within India. So it's not just one homogeneous country. It's just a amalgamation of so many different cultures and people and languages and everything, even in terms of the terrains of the places. So thank you so much for taking us to these beautiful heritage villages of India, the first of their kind in India. I would have loved to close it off by saying the Prague of India, but actually I'll be doing injustice by calling Pragpur as the Prague of India, because it's very, very unique, and it's really has its own standing in the terms of the place and the rich cultural history of it. So thank you so much. Enjoyed every bit of going through your experiences around these 2 heritage villages. Thank you, Aakash.
Thanks a lot for inviting me again. Thank you.
That was yet another great episode on the Musafir Stories. Make sure to show us some love by sharing the podcast with your friends and family. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Musafir Stories. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM podcast app or the website. Follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.